To me, it's sickening. It's almost to the point where it makes you cry sometimes.
Why did you do it, Chief? How many of your students have been shot and killed?
63.
A half-century ago, East St. Louis was an all-American city. Today, it's one of the most depressed and violent cities in the country. Prosecutors call it America's war zone. I've spent nearly a decade there investigating the school district, police, and politicians. Tonight, News 4 investigates how corruption has crippled this beaten-down community, making it harder to do almost anything, including enforcing the law. Did you commit fraud, Larry?
Negative, sir.
They are supposed to enforce the law. Can I read the warrant to you? But repeatedly. Did you text criminals and warn them that police officers were coming to get them? Police in East St. Louis and the villages surrounding. Sir, can you talk about the allegations against you? Have been charged with committing serious crimes in the line of duty. Mr. Halter, why were you arrested today?
I don't know.
You don't know. Well, here's your complaint. Why don't you read the criminal complaint?
It might have been for sucking your
Excuse me? Many of them have bounced from one small-town police department to another, often getting hired because of their connections to a chief or more prominent politicians who are either corrupt or conveniently choose to ignore complaints about their favored cops. Either way, the process of law enforcement is corrupted.
We're trying to keep the neighborhood safe.
4 years ago, then East St. Louis Police Chief Michael Baxton showed us how his officers were reducing crime in the city by cracking down on hotspots where they often found illegal drugs, piles of cash, and loaded guns. The key is what?
The key is visibility, deterrent, contact with the public.
It sounded good, but months later, our investigation revealed many reasons why the department lacked credibility in the communities it served. Our review of court documents showed that 1 out of every 4 East St. Louis officers had criminal arrest records. 4 were convicted of battery or assault. Even Chief Baxton had a mugshot. Chief, I'm asking you if you can explain why you are in this mugshot.
I can't explain it.
The state's attorney at the time, Bob Haida, told me that he had identified 15 current and former East St. Louis police officers who lacked the credibility needed to be an essential witness in criminal cases. In each case, he told East St. Louis officials in writing about the officers in question. Most of them were still on the police force, actively investigating criminal cases. We were there when a murder suspect was freed because Haida believed the cop who failed to videotape his alleged confession lacked the credibility needed to be a key witness in the case.
We were forced, because of the police misconduct, particularly by Officer Perry, to dismiss the case. It's a tragedy. It's a tragedy for the victims, the victim survivors. It's also a tragedy for the citizens of East St. Louis.
The controversy over Baxton's management style grew when News 4 Investigates disclosed that Baxton told Illinois State Police they would no longer be automatically included in East St. Louis murder investigations. He claimed he would contact them as needed, then never asked for their help. 15 months later, the evidence in more than 50 East St. Louis murder cases sat in the state police offices, untouched by the East St. Louis Police Department.
That is shameful. It's wrong. It needs to be addressed immediately.
It's a disgrace.
Annette Bowers, the mother of 25-year-old murder victim Larry Bowers, learned that the evidence in her son's case was still stored at state police offices in Collinsville and had apparently not been reviewed by East St. Louis cops for at least 15 months.
You letting murderers walk around in your city and it's sitting in the vault? What if it had been your child that was shot twice in his chest, that was cursed and left to die on the street?
Shortly after we exposed Baxton's decision on state police involvement, he bowed to pressure and invited state police to assist with all homicide investigations. But the credibility problems went much deeper than just Chief Baxton and some of his cops.
We're going to make sure that everybody we hire has a clean record.
Back then, Anthony Tarvin was the chair of the East St. Louis Police and Fire Board. Our investigation also revealed that Tarvin had been accused of aggravated assault, and battery in 6 different incidents during the previous 2 decades. He was not convicted in any of those cases. You are on the Police and Fire Board. Do you think that your record should disqualify you from that position?
It hasn't.
Not long after our reports, Tarvin and Baxton both resigned, even though East St. Louis Mayor Alvin Parks continued to support them.
Chief Baxton.
Yes, sir.
Baxton became the police chief in Allerton, a small village just south of East St. Louis. He had hired his son Michael Jr. as a cop in East St. Louis. He hired him again in Allerton, and this time made him chief of detectives. In Allerton, 2 women accused Baxton Jr. of violating their civil rights and roughing them up physically during police investigations.
I got slammed on the hood of his police car several times.
So he was actually dragging her across the gravel.
Yes, out of her clothes.
Out of her clothes?
Yes,
She was naked.
out of her shirt, naked.
They also accused his father, the police chief, of failing to properly investigate those complaints.
So per my Department of Policy and Procedure, I'm not allowed to speak with you. You have to speak with the Chief of Police.
In Allerton, village leaders may proclaim Jesus as Lord, but criminals ran the government, so public officials are often cut a lot of slack. Last year, our investigation found the city administrator and public works director were both convicted felons who had recently served time in prison.
Mr. Halter, you're accused of a very serious crime in this criminal complaint. Can you address this?
Now, Allerton Public Safety Director Harry Halter is facing a charge of official misconduct. He also owns a tow lot that got the city's impounded vehicles and was widely accused of charging the vehicle's owners ridiculously high storage fees.
The men, women, and children that live in these struggling neighborhoods deserve credible law enforcement. We can't break the cycle of poverty. We can't break the cycle of violence. We can't give these kids some kind of chance at a future if there is no public safety.
No comment.
None of that bothered Allerton Mayor Randy McCallum, who repeatedly supported the public officials who were investigated, charged, and in some cases convicted of crimes. But that's not surprising. Allerton's tolerance of official misconduct goes back decades.
The people here loves me. They come by to see me, they call me. They wish I was mayor.
Callie Mobley became mayor of Allerton in 1981, serving 19 years in office. After she became mayor, her husband Jimmy got promoted to run the streets department. Federal prosecutors allege the couple stole more than $240,000 in cash and services from the poverty-stricken village. Ms. Mobley was convicted of tax evasion and served 2 years in prison.
I think corruption is a big problem.
How do you define corruption? What is corruption?
I guess I'm going to use your word that you said, crook. And I didn't like the sound of it, but it's true. I think that we as a people that goes into things like that, I think that we think that maybe we can get away with something. I never wanted to get away with anything. I mean, once they say, you did this and you did that.
Up until that point, you were getting away with it.
But I always felt bad.
You felt bad while you were getting away with it.
Yeah.
But you kept doing it.
I know.
So you couldn't have felt too badly.
Well, I felt bad.
Her story is a lesson of the poor bowing to temptation. Mobley says when she first became mayor, she was making only $600 a month. Then, because she had access to more money and power than she ever imagined, she essentially got the keys to her own kingdom, and she quickly abused the privilege.
Because you were breaking the law, you were able to get a better quality of life.
But it was wrong.
It was wrong. No one would excuse it.
No.
But you were
and
able
I
to buy.
Want them to.
But you were able to buy nicer clothes.
Yeah.
You were able to buy a nicer car, right?
Right.
Probably nicer furniture. All those things because you were a crook.
That's what you said. You got to change that name.
But is that right?
You get the dictionary, you're going to find another word for that.
But
yeah, you're right.
But in fairness, you were a crook.
Yeah.
And it's hard to accept that.
I don't like the terminology, but you were right. You're right.
Others followed her example and also paid the price. Early this year, federal agents raided the home of then-Mayor Randy McCallum, who eventually pleaded guilty to stealing $1,000 from the village and attempting to deal crack cocaine. Just a few months after we confirmed Chief Baxton's 30-year-old felony convictions, he was caught in a federal sting operation after stealing what he thought was police evidence. A few months after what was then a still secret sting, East St. Louis rehired Baxton as police chief. 7 weeks later, Baxton pleaded guilty to theft and lying to federal agents.
Do you feel like you made a bad decision when you hired Michael Baxton?
No.
We interviewed East St. Louis Mayor Alvin Parks the day after Baxton pleaded guilty.
Mayor, you have to know how this looks on the city of East St. Louis. You hire a chief who stays here for 7 weeks.
What do you want me to do, Craig?
And then he pleads guilty to 2 felony counts for misconduct and theft, lying to federal agents, while he's the police chief of one community, and he lied to them while he was the police chief of your community.
Okay.
I mean...
Is your job to punish us now? Are you here to crucify us? We turned the page when Mike Baxton resigned yesterday. We hired a new chief. We are here to pray with, work with, and fortify that new chief of police and the East St. Louis Police Department.
Why did you do it, Chief?
But that culture is tough to change. On the day Baxton pleaded guilty, a uniformed police officer driving a marked East St. Louis police car picked him up and drove the former chief to his car. That driver, Officer Rudy McIntosh, had been an informant for federal prosecutors during a previous criminal investigation into corruption in East St. Louis city government.
Do you really think it was appropriate? Really?
Yeah.
That misplaced loyalty for the former chief happened on the first full day in office for Mike Flory, the new police chief.
No, that was not an appropriate thing to do.
During the last 2 months, state police and federal agents have joined East St. Louis Police on a series of initiatives that have helped solve old murder cases and crack down on violent crime. The efforts have been so successful that they're being expanded. When we come back, the high price of a beaten-down housing market and its impact on the poor.